My name is Megan Riakos. I am the co-founder and the board member of New South Wales for WIFT Australia, and also a filmmaker. I've worked with a number of the panelists here today. I'm really excited to be presenting this as a lunchtime session for everybody. Welcome to another edition of WIFT Virtual. We have probably like one of these a month, so keep an eye out. If this is your first one, we do advertise them on Facebook and socials and our e-news. So firstly, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land in which I'm streaming from here today, and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I also extend that respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are tuning in across the country today. So before I introduce the panelists, I thought it would be great to check out the trailer of Romance on the Menu.
It's a full house.
You don't say.
Nathaniel just arrived again.
Mom, I don't have time for romance. Laboratoire is never going to survive with reviews like this.
You've just inherited Aunt Doreen's cafe.
In Lemon Myrtle Cove?
You should go.
Australia.
Oh, hey there. What do you know about the guy who owns this place? Oh, is he as adorable as you are?
I doubt it.
Oh.
I'm Simon, the guy who owns this place. All of Lemon Myrtle Cove's finest foods, eh?
Well, I'm doing some research.
And? Maybe you should talk to the cook.
Do you know him?
Hey, order up, cook.
I need to talk to you all. I've decided to sell the Seagull.
I had a building inspector look at the cafe. There's a number of issues.
How's it going over there?
Everyone seems magically unavailable. Could you fix the Seagull?
No.
Fixing it up and selling it is the best chance we have of keeping it going.
All right, I'll do it. But if I'll be busy fixing the place up, I'm going to need your help cooking.
You got yourself a deal.
What have you done to my kitchen?
I just did a little organizing. New York isn't so bad. Every day you connect with someone new that you might never see again.
I wasn't expecting you.
Every summer during the throw party on the pier, you have to come.
I've got something I think I need to say.
I need to go back to New York.
You don't have to sell.
Are you having second thoughts?
All I wanted was to come here, farewell the Seagull, but now this guy, this cook.
Tell him how you feel.
I think I got something.
Here we go.
And I just think there was something, it's hitting the world at just the right time. I think that, we're in such a dark, kind of uncertain period, and watching a really well-made, feel-good film was the perfect antidote to that. So just congratulations to everyone on the team. So firstly, I'm just going to introduce each of the panelists. So first up, we've got Cindy Busby. So growing up in Montreal, Canada, Cindy has been making waves in the screen industry for almost 2 decades. She attended the professional theatre program at Dawson College that included a rigorous 3 years of training. And after graduation, she hit the ground running with a leading role as Ashley Stanton in over 50 episodes of the hit series Heartland. The series took off quickly, becoming one of the most popular Canadian shows ever, and is a Netflix top pick. So Cindy also performed in the film Picture This and booked guest starring roles on the smash hit series The Vampire Diaries, Supernatural, LA Complex, Rush, Proof, The Tomorrow People, and The Secret Circle. In 2010 and 2011, Busby appeared on the big screen in Diary of a Wimpy Kid from 20th Century Fox, followed by The Big Year, playing opposite Steve Martin. Cindy's work ethic and reputation has earned her over a dozen lead roles in the last few years, starring in Unleashing Mr. Darcy and Marrying Mr. Darcy, viewed by over 3 million viewers individually and breaking the network's social media record. In 2017, Busby travelled to Romania when she starred in Royal Hearts, directed by James Brolin, and most recently starring in A Godwink Christmas Meant for Love. Cindy also shows off her comedic chops as the leading lady in the series Date My Dad, and she has several movies slated for release in 2020. So Cindy joins us from Vancouver today. Hey, Cindy.
Hey, wow, to hear a biography like that is very strange, but awesome.
Well, it's a pretty big biography. It's great that we could have you come to Australia
Yeah.
and be part of it here.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, it was honestly the best experience shooting there. I loved every single second of it.
Well, for any of the budding filmmakers in the audience, you know, if you've got the right project, maybe Cindy might be willing to make the travel again.
Oh, I would. Yes, let me know.
Next on our list, we've got Rosie Lord. So this is Rosie's debut feature film. So Rosie Lord is a content creator traversing roles, formats and genres. Rosie's feature directorial debut rom-com Romance on the Menu launched on Netflix in September 2020 and trended at number 3 in the first weekend. Her horror short Dash Cam played as part of the horror anthology series Dead House Dark at Cannes Series just recently. And her digital series Starting From Now, which Rosie acts in and is the producer, has amassed over 135 million views online, sold to SBS and won numerous awards. So Rosie was also the writer, director, producer of virtual reality film Breach. She's the producer on the indie feature Skin Deep and acted in several other projects, including the mumblecore feature Chocolate Oyster, also directed by Steve Jaggi, which screened at Sydney Film Festival in 2018. She was formerly the investment manager of online production at Screen Australia, and she was also the co-vice president of WIFT New South Wales, and currently sits on the Screen Australia Gender Matters Task Force. Welcome, Rosie.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, reading biographies is weird.
That's all right. The rest of us like it. We can get a good idea of where you're all coming from.
Yeah.
Steve's next on our list. So over the past decade, Jaggi has established a brand synonymous with quality. Excuse the airplanes behind me, guys. It's a globally synonymous with quality, globally focused commercial content. His recent productions include Romance on the Menu, which was number 3 on Netflix, the young adult film Swimming for Gold, which was acquired by Universal Pictures in Europe and Asia alongside Hulu in the US, and the tween film Back of the Net, which was acquired by Disney Channel and Netflix. And on top of that, the young adult global streaming success Riptide, which was also on Netflix. So 2020 has been a massive year for the Steve Jaggi company, and they produced the very first post-COVID film in Australia. So they produced the film The Romance, This Little Love of Mine, and that was immediately followed by 2 simultaneous productions, The Thriller Kidnapped and the Christmas romance, The Dog Days of Christmas. So super busy during this time. He's currently in production on the young adult series Dive Club for Netflix Netflix and Network 10. So Jaggi's a graduate of the Griffith University Film School and recently returned to Brisbane with his company headquartered in, I don't know how to pronounce that suburb, Tenerife. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
Short and sweet. That's okay. We've got plenty of time to discuss more stuff. So, and our final person, last but not least, Kelly Son Hing. So Kelly, for the past 5 years, has been working alongside Steve Jaggi and his company. So Kelly's credits include the young adult feature Swimming for Gold, Romance on the Menu, and Kelly has also associate produced the Netflix trending feature film Riptide and Back of the Net. So most recently, Kelly produced This Little Love of Mine and The Dog Days of Christmas with Steve Jaggi and Spencer McLaren, and will also be one of the co-producers on the Steve Jaggi Company's series Dive Club for Netflix and Network 10. So both Kelly and Steve are joining us from Port Douglas on their last day of pre before they dive into the dive shoot. Welcome, Kelly.
Thanks. Hi.
So what we're going to do today, we're going to, if people do have questions, please just pop them in the chat and I'll keep an eye on it. And if I don't ask them during the course of the discussion, there will be some time at the end. But first up, I just wanted to ask each of you how you became involved in Romance on the Menu and the working relationships, I guess, that also led to this. Because, you know, some of you have worked together quite a lot before this point. So we might start with Steve. So Steve, yeah, how did Romance on the Menu happen?
Yeah, first of all, apologies. It turns out they're doing building work next door. I didn't realize. It's a bit of an inopportune moment. But so Romance on the Menu is kind of the first film in a new vertical for us. So as you'll have heard from the bio for both Kelly and myself, we've been very fortunate over the last 4 or 5 years to have had some success in the young adult stream. And over the kind of half decade, we had been really figuring out what works for us as a business. And we realized we were really good at making content for young women, predominantly, not kids content, but more tweens and teens. And that's, we were able to make one of those movies a year, and that was sustaining our growth, but we wanted to kind of expand. So we felt the kind of vertical that was logical for us to expand into was romance, which is, still female focused, but for an older audience. So we had spent about 6 months looking at material and trying to find the right piece of material. And actually this script was written by the same screenwriters who had written Back of the Net. That was a very successful film for us. So we got that material, and I think we really liked it. And then, as I'm sure you've all figured out, this game is all about minimizing risk and being comfortable with who you work with. And we had worked with Rosie a lot. We worked with her as an actor, we worked with her as a producer, and everybody knows just how talented Rosie is. And we had actually been thinking about Rosie as a director for a little while. It's something Kelly and I had been talking about for a couple of years. So it seemed like a logical fit for us with our first foray into this genre, into this vertical, to also, because there aren't really directors in Australia who are used to making these sorts of movies. So we knew we'd be working with somebody anyways who hadn't worked in this, we knew we'd be taking this journey for us, a new vertical, and a director who hadn't worked in this genre either. So we figured, what the heck, we might as well do this really stressful journey with somebody we knew and trusted. And that's certainly my perspective in terms of how we put it together.
Yeah, great. And so Rosie, tell us a little bit about, when you first heard about this project and why you jumped in and made this your debut feature.
Well, as Steve just said, we'd been working together and talking about the idea of me directing at some point, Steve and Kelly and I, over the years, because Steve actually mentored me way back in the day when I produced Skin Deep, and then when we started working together as on his project Chocolate Oyster as well. And the conversation kind of kept coming up, but I kind of shelved it as one of those conversations that would kind of always be a conversation. And I absolutely wanted to move into directing, but I know how tricky this game is and the whole of the pathways in the industry and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it was a really lovely conversation to keep having, but also I didn't put all my eggs in that basket. And then at the end of 2018, Steve emailed me, or he called me, one of those, and just said, asked me what I was doing the next year. And it was kind of really odd timing, because I was actually in the middle of a really horrendous breakup at the time, and he started telling me about this project, about it being a rom-com. And I remember having this moment of thinking, I really don't think I'm the right person for this right now. I really don't believe in love, and I don't think it's a thing that I can take into a project. But we talked about it, and obviously the script that I got to read so early on had so many good elements within it and was really exciting. And the idea of working with Steve and Kelly and the rest of the team and Christine and everyone was just so excellent. And the idea of going straight into directing a feature as well was just an excellent opportunity to bring together so many of the random bits and pieces of information that I've been able to pull over the years, but then streamline them in a project was really incredible.
Yeah, it sounds like it was such a whirlwind process and a whirlwind shoot, and getting it out so quickly. And obviously there's always bumps along the way in every production, and I'm sure we will get to that.
Yeah, we will.
Discussion. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like so much of our industry is about relationship building.
Yes.
And understanding, so much about crewing up a film is the same way you would cast a role. It's got to be the right personality, that kind of approach to the production as well as the content. So sounds like it was a great match.
When you're working in such a pressurized environment, because obviously every project's going to have a lot of pressure on it, but particularly when you're talking about something that needs to be turned around so quickly, you need to trust people, and you need to believe in them, and you need to like them at the end. You need to be able to get along with them and to have fun in the middle of it, to alleviate that stress in the process too.
Yeah, great. Before we get on to Cindy, because I know that is the, the final piece of the puzzle, really is the star of the film, I'll just jump to Kelly. So Kelly, you started off, I think, was it 5 years ago with the Steve Jaggi company? And so you've been jumping along to each of these projects on this crazy ride. Tell us a little bit about your perspective on how this whole project got up and running.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I've been with Steve and the company for over 5 years now, and I guess I've been very fortunate to be given the opportunity to be able to be involved in each of the projects in a different capacity. And Romance on the Menu, I think like Steve and Rosie said, or mainly Steve, it was a bit of a no-brainer to get Rosie on this project because she's not only a wonderful woman, but so talented in lots of aspects of film. So yeah, it was just a fabulous opportunity to work with Rosie on her debut.
Thanks, Kelly. Oh.
These guys haven't seen each other in a while. It's always nice to have a reunion.
I only say what I mean.
Zoom. So Cindy, tell us about how you first heard about this project. I mean, it looks like from your past filming career that you have filmed in various places around the world, but what was it like getting the call up about a project in Queensland?
I mean, it was pretty magical all around, but I would say, so it was, I feel like I don't even know what date it is. It was 2019, back when things felt normal. And I had a quite a busy end of summer into fall where, I just felt like I was going from one project to the other, and it was all incredible. And then I was kind of about to go home, and my manager had told me about this project working with the Steve Jaggi company, and he had mentioned that he was Canadian, a fellow Canadian, which I immediately was like, okay, you got me, like what else? And then just knowing that it was going to be in Australia, and it was a movie about a girl who goes to a land that, she knows and has a passion for, but hasn't been there in a long time, and kind of like a fish out of water scenario with someone who has had a lot of passion, in her case of being a chef, but kind of lost a little bit of that flair and kind of finds that again. And I just really loved the story. I thought it was really beautiful. And I was like, heck yeah, I want to go to Australia. So let's do this. That really was it. And then Rosie and I remember we had a Skype conversation probably like 2-3 weeks before I came out. And right away it was like, boom, like we were like, hey, how do we not know each other already? Like it just felt really easy. And then when I met Steve and Kelly, like it was just something that just fit, it was just a puzzle that was like always meant to be. And I remember Barbara contacting me because Barbara, who's here, played my mom in the movie, and she wanted to touch base with me and like kind of run lines and get to know each other. So we really had that bond going into it. And it just everything about the process felt right. And then I met the cast, and it was honestly a dream come true. There never was a day where I wasn't laughing my head off. And, despite the pressure and, delivering a movie in 3 weeks, it wouldn't be possible if you didn't love what you do, but love especially the people that you work with. And that's truly what happened with this. So I don't know how this fell into my life, but I feel really grateful that it did.
Sounds like a great experience. And yeah, like you said, this game is just too tough. It's too tough for us to not enjoy the process. It's, a bonus when you can combine the thing that you love, have a great time, get a great product at the end of it that reaches audiences. So Rosie, tell me a little bit about your perspective of that first conversation. Like, what do you do when you've cast an actor and the first time, like there's no audition process. It's not about the audition, but it's about making sure that you are on the same page. Tell us a little bit about how you approach that.
Yeah, for sure. It was one of those things that Cindy to me was this superstar. And obviously I knew of your work and I'd gone and watched a whole range of movies. And then there's always such a difference between who the person actually is and the characters they get to play in the movies. So I kind of needed to keep like a little portion of my brain aside to be like, just wait for the call, and we'll just get to meet you properly. And Cindy, it was just so gorgeous jumping on. And to me, I think of that call as, that was actually literally my last Skype call I have ever made. And since then, the world just transitioned to Zoom. It's almost like pre-Zoom times. But of course, Zoom existed, I just wasn't using it. And I think you'd just come out of the gym and we'd try to light up these times, and you'd just wrapped on a project the Friday before, and I talked to you on the Monday, and your brain was still transitioning from that project to thinking about this one and trying to get your head back into being in LA for a moment. And I just remember just connecting so easily and so organically with Cindy on the call. Like, it was just, I just wanted to get and see who she was in her natural state. And it was so obvious how, obviously I'd seen her work, so I knew she was incredibly skilled, incredibly talented, but then had this really gorgeous organic energy and luminescence, and is just obviously stunningly beautiful. And all I really needed to do was get out of the way and she'd do the job. It just was such a, there was nothing, I guess if I was looking for something specific, I was just looking to see who she was when she was relaxed and herself, as relaxed as someone can be when they're essentially on an interview call. But just to, not put her through the ringer at all, and just see if we connected and we could get along. Because shooting a movie in 15 days, you just need to be able to talk with people. Communication is so important, and if we could establish that early and trust each other, then we were going to be streets ahead, was my theory.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is a good segue for us to talk a little bit about the logistical and creative challenges that you faced from all angles in this particular process. I mean, budgets in Australia are trickier to, becoming more and more trickier to navigate, distribution platforms and pathways, the death of cinema, or so they say, all of there's so much of the changing nature. What are some of the creative challenges, and this is open to whoever wants to speak to this, what are some of the creative and the logistical challenges you came up against in this film?
I'm happy to start on that one. When the script first came to us, it was actually set in the States entirely. And early in the day, we needed to make some decisions about whether we were going to try and shoot Australia for America, or whether we actually had the capacity to shift it to set it in Australia. And we talked about it a lot, and we did some early driving around and looking at locations to try and figure out if we could, like, how easily we could actually honor the original concept and set it entirely in the States, or whether it was going to better serve the story if we actually moved it to Australia and serve the budget. And ultimately that's what we ended up deciding to do. And the writing team were like really excited by that idea. They hadn't written for Australia before, but with all of us giving input on what that looked like and showing them location photos as we started to find hero locations and all of that kind of stuff was really, really useful. And that became one of the key mechanisms in trying to streamline the production so that we could actually achieve it on the schedule. So having locations that were really close to each other, and locations that were mainly dressed already as well. They actually organically held the essence of the spaces we wanted them to represent, and all of that. So from a creative perspective, that was one of our key strategies to try and make sure that we could deliver the project on the schedule and the budget that we had. But Steve, do you want to talk about from the logistical perspective?
Sure. Well, as you kind of alluded to, it is, a bit more difficult in Australia in some respects, and obviously some respects we have some advantages, especially now during COVID. But back in the pre-COVID days, didn't have quite as many advantages. But what we lack in money, we always look for with all of our projects. We know that we can't compete with American budgets, so we always try to treat every film, as kind of a high concept movie, and that's had worked really well for us in the YA genre. So I know when we were first speaking with Rosie, we were looking at, how do we make romance high concept, which I know sounds odd, but one of the big things there is locations. I know very early on, Rosie and Christine, months before we started shooting, did all these drives around Brisbane to try and find, something that hadn't been seen on screen before, and something that would be attractive both here for audiences, but also resonate with audiences overseas. So that's one of the big things we can do when competing with US shows in particular, because a lot of the shows, and I'm sure Cindy can speak to this more, but my kind of take on this genre is most of them that are made made in LA or Vancouver, and mostly made on backlots, or they're not kind of going for that high concept on location production value situation, which is what we could bring to the table here. So we knew that was going to be our point of difference. We've learned that with our other genres, and that was certainly what we set out to achieve. We do have, though, some impediments. The cost of making movies is a bit higher in Australia than it is in Canada or parts of the US. So hence we had to shoot it in 15 days, and also we're very fortunate to get the producer offset, of course. But that also comes with a series of kind of caveats, in regards to releasing, which we can talk about later, but also in regards to how the tax year works and all that sort of stuff. So it's actually quite difficult sometimes to put the whole puzzle together. And that the logistics on this film, like every film, are really actually driven from how we're getting the money. And once we can figure out how we're getting the money and how much money we have, that dictates everything else. So we knew it had to be high concept. We knew we wanted to work with Cindy. And then everything else, we had to back into the money we had available to us and make the most of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's about building the best project you can with the restrictions that you have, and then using those restrictions as creative opportunities, I guess. The location is an absolute star in this, and I think we have got that opportunity in Australia. So it is that idea of making the best use of what we've got here in this country. Kelly, did you have any thoughts? Like, what did you find, particularly, talk more, I guess, around development and pre-production, any particular challenges that stood out for you during the process?
No, I think Rosie and Steve really covered it all. And I think the main thing is doing it in the schedule that we have with 3 weeks, because I don't think in Australia we're quite used to it. I mean, most of our films are 3 to 4 weeks. So yeah, I think that was probably the main struggle, but everyone did a great job.
I think, I was gonna say, Kelly's really underselling herself. Poor Kelly is the one that has to actually do all the contracts with everybody, and actually figure, I just get to make the edicts and be like, we're gonna do this, and then Rosie's like, yeah, we'll shoot here. And then Kelly's gonna make it happen. And the pressure that Kelly is under is pretty immense, but she's doing it flawlessly all the time. And
yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how you wrangle all those contracts, Kelly.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, and I guess the question as well is crewing up, because I'm assuming a lot of the crew had to be brought in because you're shooting on location. Were there challenges around that?
Well, just before we actually get to that one, I just want to quickly mention about Christine and the scheduling, because I think a lot of the project shooting on 15 days is absolutely underpinned by actually it being physically possible to shoot the scenes that you need to shoot in the times of day-ish that you need to shoot them, particularly when you're on location. And Christine just pulling that schedule together and looking at the different options and trying to keep it as chronological as possible, given that we were also trying to limit the locations we were going to, was just incredible. She did a really phenomenal job with that.
And I think that's worth noting as we segue into kind of crewing, that we as a company, we work with a lot of the same people over and over again. And Christine is an AD. I think we've done 7 or 8 movies with her. And so building that relationship with people and having a team of people who understand like the MO of the company, and in our particular, for our brand in particular, we make certain types of movies and we work in certain ways. And in fact, we just now, Christine's gone to directing, and so now we're having to, find new ADs and stuff. And we're, oh my goodness, it was so amazing having Christine there. We, really kind of almost forgot how blessed we were, because it's just so vital, and that's been a real learning curve for Kelly and I recently. So vital and so important to actually have a team that you work with from film to film to film, rather than reinventing the wheel all the time. Because if we were reinventing the wheel on romance with scheduling and budgeting and all that sort of stuff, we never would have been able to do it. We had to bring all that kind of history and that experience that we'd garnered over 5 or 6 movies And that's what allows us to work at this pace.
Yeah, and so that's Christine Luby, for those who aren't familiar with Christine, who has been first ADing for Yonks, and yeah, so has made her debut, directorial debut with This Little Love of Mine, and is one of the directors on Dive Club, which is what you guys are about to move into. So I guess it is that idea of casting the right crew and the right creative team to be able to do that fast turnaround and still give a really good quality and have that trust. Cindy, how did you feel? I mean, I'm assuming you've done all kinds of length productions on projects, and tell us a little bit about how you approach, from a performance perspective, such a quick shoot, a quick schedule.
It certainly is a challenging process. But I think one of the things that I love that we did that is very unique to this particular movie that I don't get an opportunity to do very often is that Rosie and the team allowed us to have some rehearsal time before we started shooting. So there was a week prior before we started shooting where we got to have read-throughs, and we, had our makeup tests and costume fittings. But along with that, we also had one-on-one discussions with Rosie. Tim, my co-star, and I were able to really connect on a lot of things and really take the script and break it down and what is really going on here, so that when we got to do the work, things still come up when you're in the process, but we really got to work through a lot of the little bumps and the things that weren't really working for us and figure them out together, so that when we showed up on the day, it made things so much easier and everyone could be a little bit more relaxed. And sometimes maybe something I would bring up, Tim or Rosie hadn't really thought about. So then it was like, oh, I didn't really think about that, So I think that really, really helped the process and facilitate things. And I really appreciated that a lot as a performer. But yeah, these 15-day shoots are a lot of work, and you're quite tired at the end. But I think it's a really strong team effort, and what Steve mentioned and Rosie about the crew knowing each other and knowing the work and showing up and doing the work and working together and having a lot of strengths, and everyone knowing what those strengths are, so you can lean on that person when you need it. And that's, and having done a lot of these, romantic comedies, that is a common theme that I have noticed that is super important. And again, it's just getting along, and as an actor, in between scenes, running lines, because you don't have time, and oftentimes you have maybe two takes, and you got to move on. And so you really have to show up and be prepared, because you just don't have time not to be. So my biggest thing is you take the moments that you can, and sometimes you have to roll with the punches. Things don't work out. I remember one of our days, it was a torrential downpour. I don't even know, for 2 hours or something. It was nonstop, and we're oh my gosh, what is happening? Are we going to Neverland? It was insane. But it all worked out. Everyone worked together, and we're bringing stuff in, and thankfully we were inside. But it's just little things like that where you just gotta make it work, and okay, well, we don't have time to go to trailers, so can you change in the bathroom here at the cafe? And it's okay, yeah, done. And you go and you change. You just do the thing that you need to do for the team, and I love that.
Cindy, you were such a trooper. You just, every time we needed you to muck in because something had gone AWOL, you were yep, okay, yep, how do we do this? Done, let's do it. And
for the most part, it was very, very smooth. It's honestly, there's those little hiccups here and there, but you kind of just get used to it. So it's oh, that thing again. Okay, cool. And you just go with it. And I don't know, that kind of what makes movie making sort of magical in a way, is the things that you're oh yeah, okay, stuff goes down sometimes, and we just got to deal with it. So yeah.
Curveballs that are always thrown. So just also just a lot of the projects, Steve, that you've made really do focus on female content, marketed for female audiences with the, you know, behind the scenes as well, a lot of female cast and crew. And so this is for everybody, you know, really, you know, what is it? Tell us about the approach to female-led content, and yeah, how do you ensure that, you know, there's a lot of companies who say, yeah, we support women in film, but if you look at their catalog, it's not really that reflective.
Yeah, look, I obviously need to be careful what I say. I don't want to be lecturing, you know, an almost middle-aged white male doesn't need to be lecturing, you know, a room full of women on how to do it. So I'll give you the brass tacks, and that is, yes, we do. If you look at our catalog, I would say it's 80%, maybe more, female focused. It's not altruistic. We didn't set up the businesses and say this is a business, you know, making content for women. That's not at all what we set out to do. It's very much kind of a scout ethos. You know, I was really big into Boy Scouts when I was a kid, and we set up this brand to make quality, you know, quality entertaining content that inspires people to lead better lives. That's the ethos of the business. And I think, you know, one of the things that we do have as a business, one of our core skill sets, you know, Kelly and myself and a number of the other team members, we visit a lot of markets. You know, we pre-COVID times, you know, do 6 or 7 markets a year. We do, you know, we're really good with international sales. And, you know, what's been very obvious to everyone outside of Australia, because of how the offset is set up here, is that, you know, cinema 3 years ago, the writing was on the wall for cinema. And I think here in Australia, we just had blinkers on because of the producer offset. But for everybody else, the game was over. And all you had to do was look at Netflix like 2 or 3 years ago, and all you look at the numbers of that Netflix got and say, okay, well, that's where it's all at, Netflix and Amazon and Disney. And then if you look in North America in particular, you've got players like Hallmark and Lifetime and TLC and A&E who are making kind of, they used to be called TV movies, but now they're making like different kind of movies that are taking the space of mid to small budget cinema movies. And, you know, even UPN and Paramount a few weeks ago switched and said, we're doing movies, but they're going to be movies for TV, but they're going to be theatrical. And so the whole landscape has been changing for a couple of years. And the benefit that Kelly and I have had, because we're overseas so often, is we could see buyers were saying to us 2 or 3 years ago, we don't care about theatrical, don't even bother. We're looking for films that connect with like actual audiences. And if you look at the stats, and Netflix gives these stats away for free, they don't tell you how many people watch, but they tell you who's watching. And I remember, you know, we sat down maybe 4 years ago after Riptide, because Riptide was an unexpected success. Like that blew up. And everybody was telling us it wouldn't work, you know, and all the screen agencies. And that was going to be our last movie. Like I thought was Riptide, and then we closed the business, you know, because we'd not had any success making art house films really financially. And then Riptide went crazy, and we looked at the stats, and we looked at, you know, we were told how many people watched it, and we signed an agreement saying we can't tell anyone else, but it was a lot of people. But we got the stats of, you know, Netflix and Sky and everything, like this is who's watching it. And you look at the stats of who's watching content, it's all women. It's women under, like basically teens and under, or women 35 plus. Now, there are different types of women 35 plus. It's not one homogenous group. But what is very apparent to anybody who bothers to look at the statistics is that teenage boys and men, you know, men up until roughly late middle age don't watch content really anymore. They're playing computer games, they're doing other things, or they're watching Star Wars, but they're not consuming in high volume. And so the people who are consuming high volume content are women. And that is what drove our shift in direction into making this content. And frankly, you're absolutely right, Megan. Like we have all these competitors in Australia who say they make stuff for women. Oh, we make this, we make that. But if you look at their catalogs, they're not. And I mean, great for us because we have no competition. But I don't understand why people are. Like it's a you know, very simple calculation. You just need to look at the stats, which are freely available, and you get all the information there. And you know, even in Australia, like, you know, Stan and Netflix and Amazon and even the free-to-air broadcasters, they tell you who's watching their content. And it's all women.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, obviously, you know, WIFT Australia is an advocacy organisation, and, you know, where we are about bringing female stories to the screen, because that is where culture changes. And part of that advocacy is the kind of ethical and altruistic angle of that, but B, when you do go and argue and advocate, you do have to bring that economic perspective as well. And the crazy thing is that economically, it makes it so much sense to be, valuing these stories, because there is an audience that is not fulfilled. And the same goes for, a lot of other, diverse content that isn't able to hit the mainstream because apparently there's no audience, when that audience is just crying out for content. So it is really interesting that there seems to be an unconscious bias that lingers, that even though it makes economic sense, that people still see it somehow as risky.
Oh, and just to your point, I just should say, and for those of you who aren't aware of this, you should definitely Google. Netflix had a big market. They have shareholder kind of announcements every quarter, and you can read them. They're on the internet. And Netflix literally are out there saying that not only female focused, but content that features heavily on diversity is substantially overperforming on their platform. There's this huge disconnect, massive disconnect between what the powers that be, and that's the trick, and that's what everybody has to chart their own journey. And this is not about our journey, but we as a business, we're outside of the system, and that's what allows us to make these films. And if you're in the system, you're told you have to make a certain kind of movie, and that audience is left years ago. The audience is gone.
Well, the thing that I think that you've just tapped into there, Megan, as well, is that I don't think it's necessarily unconscious bias in Australia. I actually think it's really conscious bias, and that's the problem, that we've got gatekeepers who that are literally holding careers back and audiences back from seeing themselves on screen.
Yeah. And so, Rosie, I mean, you've been in this industry a while now, starting out in acting and moving into the creative. And obviously, we became better friends. Like, we knew each other, but then we became good friends via WIFT New South Wales before we turned into WIFT Australia. So, you obviously have a really strong drive and passion for equality, and, now on the Gender Matters Task Force. Just tell us a little bit about, your perspective on it all, and how do you choose projects and I guess practice what you preach in a way?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I'm drawn to creatives and to the creative of stories that we haven't seen on screen, and how can we, I guess in some respects I need to acknowledge there's a little bit of an irony that my first project as a director is quite a conventional rom-com, and didn't really push boundaries in many ways, except that we were able to have at least 50% gender equity across the entire project. And that was one way that we really, really did push things forwards. But for projects that I'm developing up and projects that I'm working on, it is a lot about that combination of stories that we haven't seen on screen, and also going to what Steve was saying about his company ethos, stories that inspire people to make informed choices in their own lives. And for me, that was part of the essence of Romance on the Menu as well, actually, to loop that around a little bit, that it's essentially the story of two people scared to take the risk of falling in love. And as I mentioned at the beginning, being heartbroken at the beginning of picking the project up, that was the lesson that I chose to give therapy to myself on throughout the making of the project, and kind of infuse into it. But it is, for me, around getting excited about those stories and the people that I get to collaborate with, and the courage that everyone brings to the equation, and that magical space in between creatives that ends up it being that storytelling that can inspire people and hopefully speak to people at different moments of their lives, and connect with them in ways that we don't necessarily get to see in other projects, or get to see as frequently in other projects.
Yeah, and look, and I think that's around this idea that art is a place for us to discover what the human condition is. And, the human condition is universal, but the perspective on that condition is not. And, we have been missing a big chunk of the population's perspective for such a long time. And, whether or not you're somebody who believes in gender equality, surely you want a fresh story and a fresh approach. And that's how I always kind of advocate it to people who are a little bit blasé about, equality. I'm like, yeah, but don't you want to see, I'm so bored of seeing the same young coming of age, story about the young boy. And you're like, there's more than that. There's so many stories in the world that we could be telling. So,
well, there's so many stories and so many different new people to tell those stories as well. Different perspectives behind the scenes and in front of the camera. I just want to see, there was a era, obviously, in Australian TV where it was the same 5 faces telling exactly the same stories on all of the networks. So it was like, okay, if you want to watch anything new, where do you go? But
go
yeah,
to
with the
YouTube, where
proliferation,
Starting From Now is.
well, exactly, and actually, I think that's why web series really exploded, because people were so sick of it, and also could see that the technology was available for them to start telling their own stories. And when Starting From Now was doing its thing 2014, 15 times, that everything really exploded there for the better.
Yeah. So Cindy, you've been in this game for a long time, you know, having working with a female director and a cast and crew with 50%, you know, more than 50% parity, I guess, in on set. How was that experience for you?
I mean, it's incredible. As a female myself, that's my experience. So for me to have female counterparts that I can work with that really just have a different perspective and bring, you know, a little bit more of the feminine energy to the projects, and, you know, that kind of matriarchal idea that, I don't know, that's a really like beautiful, delicate influence to story. And I love it. And I think it's also like, you know, I've worked with female grips and camera women, and it's all the same, where we can do it all, you know, and then a lot of them are moms too, and or married. And I think it's amazing that it's just opening more and more, because we're just, pardon my language, but badasses, you know. And I'm just like always back with how hardworking, you know, everybody can be. But I don't know why it's so interesting when you have women that are doing such an intense job, and we're so like, oh my gosh, she can do it all, you know. And we're like, yeah, we've always been doing it all, and now we're like just working here on set. And it's just like, it's cool. And I, you know, as an actor, you see a lot of female actresses, but to have that as a crew is a different thing, having been in the industry now for like 18 years, from when I started to now. It's really different. And the energy, you know, with a lot of changes going on in the industry, and people, you know, not being as vocal about certain inappropriate things sometimes, and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely taken a very beautiful curve in the industry. And I think that we have so much to learn from each other. You know, women have so much to learn from, you know, the masculine, and masculine has so much to learn from the feminine. And I feel like the only way we can all really grow together is by working together. And I think that that's like a really beautiful thing. That, you know I walked away with from this movie. And I haven't personally worked with a lot of female directors. I think Rosie was maybe the 3rd one I've ever worked with. So, you know, in like 18 years, like, not great. But I know that it's getting better, and that gets me super excited. And the fact that, you know, and I think it's incredible what Steve's company is doing. And I really I just really look up to like what you're doing. And I think it's really huge and incredible that you're able not only to show those stories, but to work with that and embrace all of the changes. And I'm happy to have been a part of it somehow.
Yeah. And it's definitely, you know, I feel like that there's a change of tone. I think I started working on my first film set in 2002 in LA, and it is completely different. The tone is completely different. And even my own personal behavior on set has changed, because, you know, when you walk into such a masculine space, you feel like you have to take on those masculine traits in order to be able to, you know, be an equal on set. And I guess as you get older and you realize what that means, I guess the changes that have happened, particularly in the last 5 years, around the acceptance of you know, well, not the acceptance, the no longer the lack of acceptance of the kind of misogyny that is underlying a lot of workplaces. So it's great that there's been such a change. I mean, another thing that a lot of companies talk about is how, oh, we'd love to make more content that's diverse, or more content that, you know, has got more women and have more crews and stuff like that. But it's just too hard. We can't find them. We don't know where they are. Like, Kelly, so you would have been involved, obviously, Kelly and Steve, both of you, you know, looking for this crew and prioritizing the fact that, you know, we want to have a representation of women in the crew. Can you tell us a little bit about, your approach to that? How did you bring these people on board and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, I might backstep just a tiny bit, because I guess the company I'm working for now, the Steve Jaggi company, is actually one of the first jobs I've had in the industry. And I was very fortunate to have been taken on. And I'm not sure if Steve's had any men in the past work with him in the company, but I know with us, it's not that we're going out saying, oh, we need to fill all roles with women on screen, off screen, in the office. It's just that there's so many wonderful women around who are talented enough, and sorry, I shouldn't say enough, but are talented. So it makes it easy. And we've actually, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, found it quite hard to find men in the office. Funny enough, we get a lot of applications, a lot of, you know, men and women, and it's not biased, just a lot of the female applicants that come through are perfect. I don't know, Steve, you look like you want to say something there on that note.
It's really weird, but you're, you know, Kelly's spot on. Like, for our internal hiring, we have this could sound really weird, but we're actively trying to hire men, because right now we have 8 people on staff and there's 2 guys. And we cannot hire driven young men because if you look at the quality of female applicants, it's far and ahead of any guys that we got jobs. You know, like Cindy was saying, like, you're getting young women in who are putting 150% in from day one, and they come in with amazing CVs and amazing attitudes. So I definitely would, like, definitely from a corporate perspective, and I don't know, Kelly, like your experience, but all the companies, like all the studios we deal with, the vast majority of them are, I'm going to say 70, 80% women. So on the higher end, in the executive area, it seems to be shifting dramatically.
Yeah, I definitely remember when I first started, every meeting I went to with Steve, I was the only woman involved. And I've kind of seen that shift over the years and time with the company, which has been really great to see.
That's incredible, because it's like, 5 years isn't really that long a time, but it has been a massive shift, I think. You know, obviously Me Too was a couple of years ago now, and there's still a lot of work to be done in some of those areas, but it's a completely it's amazing how quickly things can change, and I think it gives a lot of hope to women and people who are trying to get into an industry that traditionally has been very homogenous and male.
Yeah. Would you say, though, that the shift has mainly happened in your international executive contacts? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We, as I'm sure everybody here knows from our content, you know, we the bulk of our income is from international sales, and so we are building. You know, we're doing our first TV show with a domestic broadcaster, but this is the first time that we're really working in the domestic space. So, but yeah, apropos what, you know, Rosie's saying, it definitely, particularly in the US, Canada, and some key European territories, the UK, France as an example, huge shifts in the last 5 years. And but here in Australia, it is still predominantly, and it's not just that it's men, nothing wrong with that. It's the same men. It's the same people who went to afters, who worked at Screen Australia. You know, it's the same 10 people, and they get fired from one position, they get hired somewhere else, and in the companies, and yeah, it's the same people.
So look global, everybody. Make global projects. So we are going to start moving on to Q&As now. I've got a couple of questions already that have popped up in the chat. So I'll have a bit of a read here. So we've got one from Rachel Laverty. So she says, with an established success in features, would love to know what has motivated this shift into producing Dive Club as a TV series. And do you see a gap in the market? And how did the development of Dive Club start?
Is that for Kelly?
Probably for you, Steve.
I mean, you know, I say a lot of controversial stuff and get booed all the time at film schools, but, you know, film is dead. It's been dead for years. And the writing has been on the wall for a long time. And, you know, the statement film is dead is that's a whole other thing to unpack it. Of course, cinema will still exist, but, you know, if we want to survive, we have to go where the audiences are. And I'm sure I speak for 90% of the people on this call. You know, during COVID lockdown, we've all been watching Netflix and binging stuff. And that's how audiences want to consume content. And, you know, young audiences, you know, I have a number of god kids, and none of them ever want to go to the cinema. I kept trying to convince them to come to the cinema with me. They've got no interest. You know, they're just watching YouTube. Even watching Netflix is hard enough for them. So, you know, that's where eyeballs are. And we had been trying to get into series content now for the last couple of years. It's very hard to break into. And we, you know, COVID-19 has been a really horrible thing across the board, of course. But here in Australia, for our business, we have certainly benefited from it, in the sense that because it's very hard to shoot stuff in North America and Europe, global buyers are having to look for new partners. And so for us, although we haven't had, you know, we've had some success and had some content, some small movies that have been successful, and that's been allowing us to grow. We haven't had like a breakout American show or anything like that yet. A company like ours would never get to do a big series, medium-sized series, but you know, because of COVID, we're in a position where we can say to, you know, to buyers that, hey, we can start shooting now, and that was a big part of what allowed us to get, you know, the show off the ground and get the commission.
Yeah, great. You know, there's a lot of, you know, just looking at the people who are here today, there's a lot of independent filmmakers or producers looking at their slate. I mean, for somebody who may not have that first long form credit, any advice around how they should approach market or the kind of product? I mean, it's a big question, but I know that it's a question that everyone's always has in their head.
I'm the worst person. You know, I would be very keen to hear what everybody else on the panel has to say, but all I would say is, like, this is a business built on risk taking. And I can say to you all, I was actually talking about this with somebody at dinner last night. I remember when I was in film school, and I remember a lecturer gave me like one point above fail. So I didn't fail, you know, whatever course I was taking. And they said, literally, this industry is not for you. Find a different job. And, you know, I have, over the course of my career now, which is 15, 16 years, whatever, showing my age, I have consistently seen people who are smarter than me and more talented than me, and they all give up. And this is a business about stamina, staying power, and, you know, who dares wins is my observation. I'm very keen to hear, you know, from Rosie and Cindy and Kelly, like how, you know, how they broke in and what they would recommend.
It's funny that you say that, Steve, that you got that almost fail. The number of people who I have heard of say things behind my back about, like, that I'll never make anything or I'll never do anything, I think is humbling. It's very humbling, and in some respects also motivating to, I don't know, want to revenge succeed, but I don't think revenge is necessarily the best motivation for work. It's definitely not sustainable. But obviously my background's been really unconventional, and not going to film school, and also not really actually thinking that film was going to be an industry that I could have a career in. Have pieced it together through a range of different opportunities, and coming through web series in particular, and working with Julie Kalsif on Starting From Now when she felt self-funded the first couple of seasons, and just chucked them up on YouTube to see what would happen. Actually, that's not entirely fair. She did an incredible amount of work in terms of building the core audience that we started with. And sorry, we've got flies flying around right now. But learning with boots on the ground, essentially, of how do you build an audience online, and what does that look like, and then what opportunities does that open up. And even with 135 million views, we weren't able to pitch a TV show. It wasn't sufficient to prove that there was an audience, which is just crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. They're like, oh, who needs a lesbian drama? We've already got the L word, and now we've got the L word too. We don't need another one. And it was just this bizarre conversation we kept having over and over. And now we stopped having that conversation because it was just so tiring. So it's been a couple of years now, and maybe the appetite's changed. So it's probably worth trying those all over again. But then obviously working through Screen Australia, through the Online Production Fund as well, and assisting and supporting a range of filmmakers get their projects up off the ground through self-funded web series and digital series, partnering with SBS or ABC at the time to get those credits and create those proofs of concepts, of voice, of capacity, of deliverability. Because you're right, it's an industry that's built on risk taking, and everyone's trying to mitigate the risk as much as possible, or find that sweet spot where they mitigate the risk of not losing money, but maximize the potential of discovering the hot new thing. And if you can prove that you're the hot new thing without showing, and whilst showing that you're not going to potentially waste the money or waste people's time and effort, that's ideally what they're looking for. So if there is a way that you can make your first thing so that you can prove that, you are streets ahead. And back in the day, that was a short film that people would then pitch around. And since then, it has evolved to web series and people wanting to see a full season of something. And to some respects, I think it actually might be shifting back the other direction again, as the web series market has been on a bumpy road. Obviously, Quibi last week announced, or this week, I don't know, last year, whenever it was, has announced that it couldn't sell and is completely folded. And that's within the space of, they only launched in April, and everyone's been like, this is almost a peak period that they should have been able to succeed in. So there's now this whole new conversation about whether digital series and web series have any space in the market.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's that idea. I mean, it's interesting looking at the stuff that's coming out of the online department is much more diverse than the stuff that's coming out of the, upper end of the budget from Screen Oz. But, often it is having had some kind of runs on the board or some kind of proof of audience, I think, in order to, and I guess that goes to Steve. It's like, make content. Like if you want to, if you want to make art films, then you understand that art films may not necessarily, you'll have to earn your income from another avenue, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you are looking at actually making a living out of the films that create, I mean, you have to listen to audience. It's got to be number one. Cindy, just your thoughts. I mean, you've got I think are you shooting right now at the moment?
No, I just finished shooting this week, actually.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about the kind of, you would get different roles coming across your table. Have you noticed a kind of shift in the kinds of content that's coming out? Is it more series, or is there still is one-off long form still strong, but in the streaming space? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree with Steve on that. I feel like a lot of the content is, there's a lot of female-based shows right now, and definitely the diversity aspect has changed immensely, which is amen to that. But yeah, I would agree to mostly series and movies, but more in the genre of streaming type films. And I would say like the turnaround is getting like faster and faster too. And people are just kind of wanting that content, and it's just coming out, and people are hungry for it. I mean, and we're talking about female content, but a lot of the movies I make, which are a lot of rom-coms or, some thrillers as well, like it's not just females that are watching. Like there are some men, and a lot of times it's the women bringing, and they're like, I wasn't sure about this movie, and then they're like, I really liked it, and I'm like, yes, and I think that there's an audience that really enjoys that as well. And but yeah, and I would like to say as well, in regards to making it and creating your stuff, and I think consistently and reputation and and relationships is a huge part of anything that you do, and something that I really take to heart in really like cultivating relationships with everyone that you get to work with, because you never know who's going to be hiring you next or suggesting you next, or you know, putting your name forward. And I have truly seen the proof of that firsthand. And, you know, you got to put in the work and the consistently and the appreciation and showing up. And when you do that, people don't forget, because there are so many people not doing that, that when you do, they're like, okay, we need more of this, please. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, the other thing that kind of struck me as well, just hearing you all talk about, you know, the different projects that you're doing and the teams that you work with and the diversity and, you know, the gender equality that, you know, gets prioritized is about that idea that if you need to have that in the upper echelons of your company for it to filter down. You know, there's a reason why, you know, Steve and Kelly, you're getting all those applications. It's because people know that you make the content, that, you know, that you're not going to be dismissed for the kind of work that you do or the person that you are. And I think that's perhaps a mistake that some companies make, thinking that if they just declare that they are diverse or that they welcome female stories, but it's not actually represented in the makeup of that company, and people aren't gonna think it's a place that is right for them. Yeah. So we've just got another question. If anyone else has any other questions, pop them in the chat. And this next one here is again from Rachel. So would love to hear from Kelly and Rosie on best tips for pitching a female-focused story from their experience in hearing pitches and being attached to projects themselves. What's the key thing that makes them want to be involved in those, like if they're being pitched at, or, you know, what's the thing that you want to do when you're pitching?
Kelly, you take this one.
I was going to say Rosie first. I mean, this is a good spot to also loop Stephen, just because I think Steve and I work together a lot in getting pitched a lot of content. A lot of our, I guess, projects start in-house, but we also get a lot of great concepts. Like they vary from dark to quite light content, which is really good at this time and a lot that we specialize in. That's a good question. I don't know. Steve, do you wanna?
No, I'm not letting you down this one. Just for the perspective of the audience, it's Kelly who reads all the scripts. It really is.
So send them to her.
I mean, Kelly, what resonates with you? Like, you know, for you to bring, because we would have like twice a month, you know, we have a boardroom conversation and we talk about material. And Kelly's the one who reads it, honestly. So
yeah.
What resonates with you?
Yeah. So I think it's really important understanding who you're pitching to. For a company like us, I think it's quite obvious in what we do, and we produce and sell, but we do get a lot of scripts that are very far off from what we would do. So unfortunately, most of the time it would be a pass, but we might know someone who would be a good fit for you and the project. I think that's really important to know who you're pitching to, and networking. I think having those connections within the industry really help a lot. It's a bit short and sweet answer.
Yeah, no, but it's so true. Absolutely doing your research of who you're sending it to. You can't just copy and paste the same pitch and send it to 30 different production companies, because they've got unique brands, they've got unique perspectives of how they represent that brand, and at any particular time they might be looking for something specific. Doing that research isn't always an easy thing to do, because sometimes those conversations are very private as well. So whatever public knowledge you can get out of like the inside film and the filming interviews and even what's happening through like the development slate through Screen Australia is really interesting. For me, I think it's interesting that I actually don't, I'm on the fence. Like I can hear myself backtracking as I want to say this sentence, but I don't like being pitched female stories, because I don't think we should be differentiating. I want to pitch a story of a person who I have not seen before, and more often than not, they happen to be female or gender diverse. And that is the world that obviously that I know and that I want to see represented. And I'm always looking for a unique character and a unique set of circumstances that they're in. And I'm more genre agnostic than the Jaggi company is. So I'm more open to sci-fi and thriller and horror and children's animation randomly at the moment, and as well as rom-com and comedy and dramedy. And so I'm working across a whole range of projects with a whole range of different creatives. But for me, it is really about that unique perspective on the world, those unique characters, and what that personal drive is from the creative. I want to hear about the story, but I also want to hear about the drive, the impetus for that story. Why is that story the thing that you are so passionate to tell? And what's going to keep you burning when times get tough, because every project is going to hit bumps along the road where it is tricky, and everyone's got to stay motivated through that. So it's not just, it's in part the actual story, but it's in part you as a creative that you're pitching as well.
Yeah, and sorry, just carrying on, but off topic at the same time, when you are pitching, it's quite a boring task, but I wouldn't just send the script through. The little pitch deck really does help with the short synopsis, logline, or anyone else who's attached to it, and a mood board, because that will get us excited and make us want to read the script more than anything.
Yeah, great. Cindy, what do you look for when somebody approaches you, via your agent out of the blue on a project? Like, what is it that sparks the interest for you and makes you want to say yes?
Well, there's two things. If it's something in the same vein that I have been a part of in the past, then I'm looking for very specific things. And then the other side of things is if it's just a part that, as myself, I don't normally get an opportunity to do. So, a lot more dramatic or comedy or things like that I really am passionate about, and I just love to do. Comedy is a huge thing that I adore. But in a lot of the scripts that I'll receive, I'm looking for, when I read the script, do I want to turn the page, number one? Because sometimes I can barely get past page 10 and I'm like, I can't do this. And also, when I'm reading it, do I feel like an excitement about the character? And does this spark something inside me that I haven't really seen? Or sometimes it's even about my own journey and how it's sparking something that I'm personally going through that is projecting itself into the script that I'm now reading. And I'm very emotionally focused. And so when I read something and it makes me laugh, or it makes me cry, or it just makes me angry, or whatever it is, then I'm like, if I'm getting that off the page, then I need to be a part of that, because I'm all about telling story and making people feel. And that's my thing that I love and that I look for. So when I get that sensation, I have to follow through with it, and that gets my attention for sure. And then of course, people that are attached to it as well that can help or not help, depending on the situation.
No, that's great. So we've almost run out of time. I have got one more question and then we'll just kind of wrap it up, I think. So Joanna Beveridge says, when pitching young adult or rom-com stories in Australia, how do you break through the barrier of people who don't necessarily understand the fandom, such as what shipping is, or creating something that fans on Tumblr can create romantic gift sets for? I find it tricky to explain this side of audience and fandom.
Oh my God, first can we just say, Megan, I absolutely loved your face when you said shipping just then. Like, shipping? Is this really what?
I was going to say, I feel old. I don't know what shipping is.
Oh my God, people, come on.
Help?
Well, we had a shipping war happen on Starting From Now. It's when there are relationships. So it's shipping is the relationships, right? So when you've got fans that are, particularly if there is a love triangle in some respect, and you've got some fans that are barracking for one particular combination of characters and fans that are barracking for another one, and then when they start arguing against each other, shipping. Yeah? Do you understand? Yes? Good. I got that? Great.
Steve knew what that was.
Oh my goodness. I love trying to explain shipping to people. Like whenever I say it, oh, I ship this to people so much, they're like, what? What? I'm like, what do you mean I what?
Yeah,
I get in a boat.
Lots of that in Dive Club, don't worry.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, great. So you're in building that into it. So I guess Steve and Kelly, like, you know, you guys have done a few rom-coms now. How is the pitching process with this? Like, are you actually, is it you present the concept and people, it's tried and tested, or?
No, it's not good at all. My first piece of advice is move to LA, but there's COVID, so don't move to LA. You're going to find it very hard in Australia, but you know that already. What can I say? Like, that's how we built our brand. And, you know, we like to think, you know, I'm sure we're not the only people in that space, but we're the dominant players in the YA space and hopefully soon romance space, because we know that. And, you know, I think it was Claire Harris, who's a writer that we work with a lot, who wrote an article a couple of days ago, a few weeks ago, talking about like understanding how things get pitched and understanding how to get your shows made. And it's worth, when you're pitching, understanding that you're not pitching to the buyers. You're not pitching to Netflix. You're not pitching to Amazon. What you have to do is you have to find a production company that understands what you're writing, and then they're pitching. But even getting through the door of the production company can be hard. So, you know, it might be a scenario where you have to find like a filmmaker who's got a connection with the production company. The production company is big enough to do something with Netflix or with Amazon. And so it's a fiendishly complex process. And I think a key takeaway from this panel is this business is still so reliant on connections, and how important it is to network and build those connections. And, you know, for all of us, like, again, Kelly and I knew Rosie really well, but, you know, with Cindy, we didn't know Cindy and Cindy didn't know us, but there was that Canadian connection because I come from Canada originally. And, you know, I love Road to Avonlea, and, you know, that's the kind of connection, you know, that we have. So when you're like trying to figure out how to pitch stuff, and I think it was Rosie who was talking about this, like, look at, like, you kind of almost have to have like a whiteboard and strategize. Okay, my show's for Netflix, but it's 5 generations of people, you know, it's 5 Kevin Bacons to get to Netflix. And how are you going to do that? And then finding something in common with each of those Kevin Bacons. And the good thing with most filmmakers, and certainly with Kelly and I think it's, you know, fair to say of Rosie and Cindy, like, we're all super nerds. And so there is always a way to our heart.
So before we wrap this up today, I want each of you to just very quickly, one thing you wish you knew when you started your career in the screen industry that you can pass on to people. So one thing, Rosie, we'll start with you.
Sorry, I'm just going to say, somehow we've just had like the pool guys turn up.
Is this a romantic comedy?
Apparently. Wait a second, he's moving my laundry. Maybe it is. Something I wish I'd known when I started. Ooh, can I come back to that one? Yes.
Right, next.
Steve,
you're next.
Give me 1 second. I'll come back.
My vision. Steve, what's one thing you wish you knew?
Sorry, I was on mute. It's gonna be somewhat morbid, but, you know, we only live once, and as I have now dedicated nearly 2 decades to this business, it's a super hard business. And if you're not 100% passionate about telling stories and doing unique things, like, don't do this for the money, because you're not going to make any. And you know, you got to be 100% passionate, and otherwise, you know, there are plenty of other things to do that are probably a lot more fun. So, you know, be careful what you wish for.
Be secure in your passion, or go elsewhere. Cindy, what's one thing you wish you knew?
I feel like it's so hard to just say one thing. There's so many things. I would say, okay, I'm going to say 3. I'm breaking the rules. I would say number 1, nothing is personal. It's not personal, it's business. And it's all about timing, and, you know, it's so many things are involved. It's such a machine that it's like, if not this, then something else. And like, don't get so stuck on that one thing that didn't work out in your favor, because it just wasn't meant to be, and it was never yours to begin with. And I really think that if I was able to just surrender from the get-go and knowing that something greater was always to come, I feel like those things could have come easier and faster for me if I just allowed them to. Because things are not going to work out all the time. So just accept that, and then that'll just make everything so much easier. And then I would just say, take chances anytime you can, and be kind to everyone, because you never know what that person can help you with 5 years down the road. And people don't forget.
Love it. Kelly, what's your one thing or two things?
It's such a hard question. And it's going to sound very cliche in everything I'm about to say, but I personally have just enjoyed learning as I've been going on my journey. You just keep learning. I don't think there's a time I don't learn anything on each project. And I definitely agree with Steve, because I think this year, mostly, it's a tough industry. So you definitely have to want to be in this and be passionate about it. And the same thing that Cindy said about being kind. And I think not just with women, but with everyone, just support each other and try not to make this industry even more difficult, because it's tough enough, and we don't need certain personalities making it harder for you to wake up in the morning like, ugh, I gotta go deal with that person again, or have to go to that set because these people are there. And I think this is just coming from a personal place, so apologies to Steve, who may have heard this from me a lot, but I think a lot of people look at me, I feel old, but people look at me as being young and will treat me differently because of that. And that's, especially this year, has made it quite difficult.
Yeah, right. Being underestimated, and those people may not know the mistake that they have made, because you are a rising star, Kelly. Like the amount of what you've been able to do in your career, and what you're able to achieve, and the support that you provide the company is pretty amazing. So yeah.
Oh no, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But I guess that's where I do want to say, and I know we're all on here and Steve's the only man, but Steve's been really good in, first of all, giving me that opportunity back when I was 20 something, and just moving the company forward, and everyone we have been working with. He really has championed a lot of, not just women, men too, but it's been difficult for a lot of people who didn't think they had a chance, but Steve's been there championing all the way.
Awesome. Rosie, have you got your thing?
I've got my thing, but I just want to say, Kelly, that's a real shame, and shame on them. They've underestimated the wrong person. And they'll find that out.
Thanks.
Yes, I've got two things. One is allow yourself to be surprised. As I said earlier, I wasn't entirely sure that the film and TV industry was going to be a place for me, and I actively have stepped into challenges and opportunities along the way, and I've been surprised by what I found. Okay, three things. So allow myself to be surprised, but then the thing that I wish I had learned earlier is to have confidence in the knowledge of what skills I brought to the table, even if I was stepping into a new space and a new skill set and a thing or an environment that I wasn't comfortable with, being confident with what I was taking with me and moving forwards with, and partnering that confidence with the confidence to then ask for the support that I felt that I did need, and that those two things go hand in hand. And then the last one is, this is actually a thing that I was talking with my friend Sam with on the drive up here for this holiday, was we were talking about the danger of the fear of being pigeonholed, the fear of doing a thing, getting known for that thing, and getting stuck in a thing. And I was talking with her about, and I can't remember who she heard it from, but she heard that the best way to not get pigeonholed is to not be a pigeon. And it just made so much sense. I was just like, oh yeah, great. Why would I be a pigeon? And like, cool, I can go do a thing, and then I can do another thing. And that can be, that it can just be that simple. And I feel like sometimes I have felt it myself. I've been hesitant to take a risk and do something because I've been scared that I get stuck in that particular spot. And maybe I've held myself back from some opportunities that would have been incredibly beneficial and wonderful in the process. But now I just know to not be a pigeon.
Take away for the day. If you take nothing else away today, but that one thing, don't be a pigeon. And then just really quickly, I'd love to hear just in one sentence what each of you have got coming up. So we'll start with you, Kelly.
Learning how to unmute. Well, I guess for Steve and I, because we're working together at the moment, Dive Club. It's Steve's show running, Steve's concept, and we're really excited to be up here in Port Douglas with a great cast and crew.
Awesome. And Cindy?
I don't have many details, but I just finished a movie called Chasing Waterfalls, and I know now you're gonna have that song in your head all night. You're welcome. And then a movie that is called Accused and on the Run. And yeah, so stay tuned for more details.
Awesome. Steve?
Well, as Kelly said, we're doing our first TV series at the moment, 12-episode series in Port Douglas. And then next year we have 4 movies and a series. So, you know, it's looking good. I think the big thing that we need is actually to take some personal time. A holiday, that's what I should say.
Holidays on the agenda. And we did have a question that if people were interested in interning or anything like that with the company, what's the best way? Email?
Kelly, what's the best way?
Best way would be to email info@stevejaggi.com.
There you have it. And Rosie, what are you up to?
I'm developing some stuff and reading some scripts for next projects at the moment. But the big thing for me is, up until Christmas, is I'm going to be taking some family time. My mum has some health issues going on, and I'm going to be there to do that. So up until Christmas, that's going to be my priority, and thinking about what's happening in the new year.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, massive thank you to our panelists today. If you haven't seen Romance on the Menu, go and check it out on Netflix, along with all of the catalogue of amazing films that the Steve Jaggi company has made, Cindy's work, Rosie's work, yeah, have a really great end of the year. Before you all go, just one quick note that WIFT Australia, for those who are parents and carers and live in Sydney, we do have the Making It Possible program that's running again. So that's a kind of business and career course that can help you get back on track if you feel like you're stuck in where you are in the industry, or trying to get back in after taking some caring leave. So just check that out. We've got info on our social media and stuff like that. A big thanks as well to Yolandi Franken, who organises WIFT Virtual. Do you want to say a quick hello and anything you needed to say, Yolandi?
Hi, yes, no, it's a great pleasure. I love doing this, and I love bringing all this wonderful knowledge that we have in our industry to each other and sharing, because like Steve said, this is a very difficult industry, and if we don't work together, we have nothing. We only have each other. So yeah, come and join us at all of our events.
Yes, awesome. And we do have actually, for those in Sydney, we're having our first in-person event after since COVID started at Actors Centre Australia, and I think that's on the 11th of November, and it's the business of acting. So for those of you who are interested, check it out. So on that note, I think that is it.